Alright guys, welcome to the channel. This is going to be the first video of what I hope to be just some basic mechanical instruction videos pertaining to motorcycles, specifically the Royal Enfield Himalayan. But we might do other stuff on the channel too, just depends on kind of how squirrely we get with projects this summer. First video is all about this. It is the Tec cam for the Himalayan. And first and foremost, I want to say that Tec has a video for this. George did a really good install video, and the purpose of this is not to replace his video. There's some how-to videos out there too. I think Two Wheels Ben did one over in India. And again, I'm not trying to replace any of those. I've watched them all, and I find that a lot of these videos are targeted towards people who have maybe torn an engine apart. They're experienced with it. Certainly George's video is of that group. It's not to say that a person cannot do it by watching that video with no experience, but I think that I can add a little bit to the discussion here that might make you a little more comfortable to tackle this job if you've never worked on an engine to this degree, like you've never pulled a cam from an engine. As such, you can see that we've already got the bike apart, and I'll be showing you the motorcycle in a minute. So we're not going to go over the entirety of the tank removal and all of that, but I want to show a little bit of commentary on this job that I think is going to help you out. So first, if you have never done something like this, you might even be wondering, well, these guys on the forums talk about it. I want to get more performance out of my bike. I'm not really sure why I put a cam in a bike, so let's do that real fast. The camshaft is the component of the engine which turns with the crank, okay, and opens and closes the valves. It sits in the head of the engine, and basically the lobes on the camshaft here push on the valves and the rocker arms, excuse me, and open and close your valves. The 411 engine it just doesn't really breathe well from 3,800 to 4,500 RPM, 5,000 RPM. So Tec came up with this to solve that problem and really get the engine to be where it should be. The other thing, a reason why you might want to change the cam, is the stock cam has this on it. It's a mechanical decompressor here. It's spring-loaded, and the purpose of this thing is to allow the engine to crank a little easier starting, take some load off the starter. It is a extra piece of engineering that doesn't have to happen, right? It's not necessary once the new cam's on there, and like all mechanical parts, these have failed. There have been people who have experienced noise and all kinds of issues with these mechanical decompressors. The new cam eliminates it. So you're going to get more power, and you're going to get the elimination of one more thing that can break or stop working on the bike. So let's take a look at the motorcycle. Okay, so we have the Himalayan here, and you can see that everything's already all removed. Tank has been removed, the seat's been removed. All these parts here I've moved and taken to the side, and I have covered the engine with some foil. The foil is just because I started this job a different day, and I wanted to cover it up so that nothing would get in there when my wife pulled her car into the garage. So if we pull this foil off, you're going to see that the head here, what makes this kind of a simple engine design is the camshaft runs right in this cutout here, and also in the what would normally be called a valve cover. It's really a head cover on these engines. So the cam rides here. There's no rocker or cam covers that or bearing caps that hold the cam in there separate from the valve cover, what would be a valve cover. So that's the first thing you notice about the simplicity of the engine. You'll notice that the chain here, I've zip tied it up just because I need to keep it from dropping off of the teeth on the bottom, and the engine is already set at TDC. I'm going to show you that in a minute. So following the disassembly procedure that George will show you on the tech video. It's a pretty simple process, but there's a few things I want to point out. The first is, on the tech video, George talks about a front and rear pry point. That exists mostly on the rear. What you want to be careful of doing, and he mentions this in the video, is as you pry the cover off here, not to break or bend the fins. So I looked at this and I thought, okay, what's the prying point he's talking about? The one that I found was actually on this bar. The front, you can actually lever a pry bar right underneath the cap without putting any pressure on this fin on the front. So you can wiggle it that way. That might be where you break your seal. The other one, going to the other side, is going to be right here. Right here where the engine actually attaches to this bracket, okay? This is the fin, but this piece here is solid. And you can get underneath here. If you put the pry bar right here, you're not pushing on a fin anymore, okay? You're pushing on the block, and that'll be enough to pop this up. When you pop it up, just do a good pry, and it'll pop on one side, and then you can do what George says, is just pull up on it. If you try to take these bolts out, okay, you get everything out, and you just try to muscle this thing up, I don't know, I can't see that coming off just by pulling it straight up with your hands. I mean, you'd have to be pretty strong, and the bond would have to be pretty weak. I found using a pry bar to start it was the best way to break the seal on that RTV. So this spot is where you can pry. This bar up here is the other spot you can pry to get that part up. And this is the part we're talking about. This is the head cover here. I'm going to call it a head cover because it actually is part of the head, and you can see we have the places that the cam runs. So here is where you're going to have to cleaning off all of the RTV. So my recommendation for that is do not use a razor blade, regular razor blades. Use plastic razor blades. These are great. You can get them on Amazon. And then the kits even come with these little tools. And this is going to allow you to really get in here and scrape, but it's going to let you not scratch that aluminum. Really important to do, and they're super cheap. You get like 1,000 of them for $10. So use these to clear off your head cover. And we're going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to stop the video, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll continue with this reinstall. Okay, so we have all of our gasket scraped, and this is a point when I really want to mention something. If this is the first time you've ever done one of these things, it's really important to keep in mind that these surfaces need to be clean enough to create a new bond with the new RTV, okay? They need to be clean enough to create a bond with the new RTV. They do not need to be art gallery clean. This is one of those areas where, if you listen to George in the video, this job should take a person who's done it a couple of times an hour and a half. It's about a 2-hour job. This stage can turn a 2-hour job into a 10-hour job if you develop a Jesuit obsession with making this look like a brand new machined surface that has never had RTV on it. It's a difference between getting every molecule of old RTV off and getting enough of it off and cleaning it that a new bead can be applied. And what I'm talking about here is if you look close on here, you're going to see that there is a texture pattern to this. Now, I need to clean off this little bit here on the inside, that old RTV. But looking at the surface here, even the surface here, okay, this is just fine, okay? There's a little bit of old RTV on there, but I have scraped it with the plastic. I have run some Goo Gone across it. I have then polished it up with brake clean. I can see the texture of the head through what little remains on there. That is just fine. You do not need, if you sit here and you scrub on this to get every little bit off, you're going to be here all day trying to get that off, every last little bit. And it's not going to make it seal up any better. If you same thing, you look over here. This one's done. You can look. Guys, there's a little bit of discoloration there. You can see there's like a few little molecules of that in the crosshatch pattern. I'm here to tell you it's totally fine. Clean it off, run a shop rag soaked in brake clean across it, let it dry. Do not get any brake clean on the bearing surfaces, but clean it off, let it dry. It is good enough. You're never going to get it perfect unless you sit there and use one of those mechanical buffer wheels, or you scrub on it with a rag with RTV remover for an hour. It's going to be fine. I guarantee you this is not going to leak. The other thing that Royal Enfield does, it's kind of weird. There's this part here. This is the plug. This is the plug for looking at the cam. George mentions in his video that Royal Enfield says not to pull this thing during the teardown. Well, I went ahead and pulled it just so I could see the marks, and just so for reference, I'm talking about it goes right here. Royal Enfield just RTVs the shit out of this. Sorry there for the language, but he they absolutely cover it. As you can see, there's a O-ring in there. So, and it's going to be covered in oil when you pull it off. So what I do is actually pull this off, pop the O-ring off with a little pick. Be very careful not to damage it. Soak it in brake clean, and then clear off all the oil, and then you can scrape off the gasket. Again, good enough to get it glued back in with your new RTV. If you're the type of purist who wants to make it look absolutely perfect, my hat's off to you, but the reality of it is that's going to take forever. When you go to reseal it, you got a couple of choices. You can use the Royal Enfield recommended. My two favorites, personally, are, if I'm working in a hurry, the 90-minute gasket sealer, this Permatex, and then if you got a little bit longer, Honda Bond High Temp is really, really good. And this is, it sets up a little slower, but it's like phenomenal gasket sealer. So today, because I want to get the bike running to ride it to work tomorrow and test it tonight, I'm going to go ahead and use the 90-minute Permatex stuff. But again, get your surfaces clean, just as George says in the video. Look for that crosshatch pattern here. You can see, okay? And do not worry about it being slightly discolored. This is just fine. You don't want any big pieces of gasket to be stuck on there. If you can take a plastic scraper and push and still get some on the plastic scraper, then you need to keep going. When you can no longer get any off using the plastic scraper, or if you're an old school guy who's very careful, a razor blade, you're good to go. So don't overcomplicate this. Can't say that enough. Let's go ahead and get the cam in. Okay, so the cam's in. Here's the new cam. If you want to see kind of how George does it in his video, I definitely recommend watch it. He brings it in from the other side this way, so it's coming towards you. Leave the sprocket off center, just leave it off the little shoulder it sits on, just so you can kind of get it in there. Put the chain on, make sure your two timing marks, right? TDC, okay? You want those two marks lined up with the head. These little marks here, okay, right there. Those little guys lined up with the head, and you want to see the T at the top. Then check it for the timing here. But the thing is, when you check this, okay, look at this mark. If you are sitting over here, looking like your body is positioned looking at the cam, and you kind of cock your head and look in that hole, it's very possible to have that thing move too far forward or too far back. Get right out in front of the bike, and then you're going to see that timing mark, okay, is going to line up. See when we get it? Right here, see that? There you go. See how that kind of perspective changes? That is dead on. All right, you want to make sure that mark is there. Royal Enfield actually really is confusing, because on these cams, on the crank, they have a bunch of marks. There's like a bunch of little slash marks. There's even a little T. You want to find the big long line next to the T, and that is what you're looking for. And you can always verify, make sure it's good. So we'll do the tensioner, we'll crank it over a few times. One sec, we'll go ahead and do that. Really quick about the tensioner. So this is the timing chain tensioner unit here. When you put it in, you're going to notice that it is kind of offset. And when you put it in, you want this ratcheting mechanism up here at the top. Okay, so it's going to kind of have this lip there. You'll notice if you flip it the other way, there is no lip on the top there. See how it's offset? So you want to put it in this way with the ratcheting mechanism up. All right. Anyway, this is the one physical gasket you're going to need for this job. Tec included mine in my order, but you're going to want to pick it up. It's like one of these paper ones with the little rubber insert, similar to like a water pump gasket. Anyway, it's going to go right here. You want to clean that off real good. Make sure you scrape off all the pieces of that of the gasket and don't get anything in the hole. Not too terribly complicated, but yeah. Okay, so now we're ready to put our bolts in to the head cover here. It's been installed. I put the gasket sealer on. Now you'll notice, see, we just have a tiny little bit of protrusion here. Not a lot. If you put this thing on and it just comes out of here like Niagara, you put too much on there. Okay. Anyway, we're getting ready to seal this thing now, and or torque it, excuse me. And to do that, we need to put the bolts back in. In the video, George talks about using a piece of cardboard or something to keep track of your bolts. This is what he's talking about. Grab yourself a piece of cardboard, and you'll notice I have an arrow pointed. So I was standing here when I disassembled the engine, which means that I just point the arrow the way I was facing, okay? And here's all my bolts in the correct pattern. It keeps track of them because, as he says, some of them have washers, some of them don't, different lengths. This just makes it impossible for me to get them back incorrectly. So I'm going to put them in now and torque them down. Okay, so the head cover is now torqued on. And we've put this cover back in. This is the timing mark cover. For whatever reason, Royal Enfield RTV'd this on the edge, so I went ahead and did that too. You can see that when my proper torque is applied, we have a little bead protruding here, okay? If you go around, you're going to see underneath just a little bead. Let's get some light in there so you can see that. It's a little bead. See it coming around? It's just like the factory was. What we don't want, little bead all the way around. We are not looking for a bunch. If you shouldn't. General rule of thumb I learned when I was going to trade school was with this stuff, you're probably gonna use too much even when you try not to use too much. So you want even coverage, but less is better, and just a little bead should be all that is present when you torque everything down. Last step to do before we reassemble everything is the valve adjustment. Valve adjustment's pretty easy. It's going to be the easiest one you ever do anyway, because all this stuff that we've disassembled is out of the way. Normally all these pieces are in the way. A lot of this is going to go away when I do my evap delete and my air injection delete, but that'll be for another video. Anyway, let's go ahead and take care of that. The valve adjustment here, I have a few comments on that. One moment. Okay. So when I adjust valves, what I like to do, at least it was taught to me in the shop during my apprenticeship, was you want to feel some resistance on your feeler gauge, but you don't want to have to pull it, and certainly never any up and down movement. So what I use is a offset box wrench here and a piece of a valve adjust tool from a motorcycle. You order the valve adjust tools off of Amazon, and I just pull this piece out. Pop the O-ring off and a little snap ring off and pull this out. So here we go. I've over tightened this now. It doesn't even move. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this. My nut is still just hand tight, so I'm going to loosen this just a tad, and now still can't move it. You see it start to move. Yeah, it's too loose, no resistance at all. So I now know I'm getting kind of close to the setting. I'll finger tighten that. I'll set this on there at this point, and I'll put the tool on, And you gotta you have to move your wrench a little bit here. And what I wanna do is I just kinda wanna feel too loose, too loose, too loose. Kind of hard to be in a goofy position. I kind of want to be standing where the camera's standing, or the camera stand is right now. But I'll try to film this for you. Okay, still too loose. Too loose. Too tight. Right there, a little drag. Now the spec, I like going a little on the loose side if I have to bias to one side, just because these valves tend to tighten up over time. And a little bit of a loose valve will be in a valve adjustment will be an annoying tap. A little loose, right? Not a lot loose. Too tight a valve is bad news bears. So we want to just, if we're going to bias towards one, we're going to, yep, little resistance, and I can pull that resistance with just my fingers. Now I want to hold the position of the adjuster, and this is really hard because you want to tighten it too much. There's guys who'll get torque wrenches out for this, and there we go. Check. Yeah, I can feel a little resistance, but not too bad. And that's how you adjust a valve. And you just rinse and repeat for the other side. Do it a couple times and check it. And remember, you know, if you have to be wrong, being a little loose with a little tapping, you can always adjust it. Being too tight is not where you want to be. That's not good. So valve adjust. All right, moment of truth. Let's start her up, let it tick over for maybe 10 seconds, and make sure that everything's running. And then we can do the little break-in, let it break in at about 2,000 RPM. So this is the moment of truth. Let's see if this thing, if I brick the bike. I've already checked fuel leaks, build up a little bit of fuel pressure. The other thing I did was I pulled the plug and turned the engine over about 10, 11 times, get some oil up in there. So let's see how we do. No choke. Okay. Sounds like it's running. Next thing I'm going to do is move the bike out and start her up and hold it between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM for about 5 to 10 minutes. Really get any kind of wear that's going to happen right away to be done at with a lot of oil pressure, and then she's going to be ready for that 300-mile break-in. Not going to film that because that's going to be exceedingly boring, but there you go, guys. Cam install seems to work just fine. Okay, final thoughts. This is a pretty easy advanced job. What I mean by that is working on the engine's pretty simple to follow directions. You're not going to run into any really complex systems on the Himalayan. It's installing the cam is a really fun, first complicated job working on your motorcycle. So if you're at the point where you're doing your own maintenance, okay, you've got your own workspace, you've got your own tools, you can do a lot of that stuff, and you're confident with it, you think you might want to start breaking apart engines, this might be a really good first foray into advanced work. I will say it is not a job I would do if you don't have a workspace to work. It's not a job that I would do if you do not have a workspace where you can leave the bike should the worst case scenario happen and you end up in a situation where you have to go get some parts, or you forgot something, or you need to get some razor blades, or some kind of tools, and or maybe if you just go really slow and you lose the light, it's good to have a place to work on the bike. If you're living in like an apartment, or you've got a situation where you can't work on your own motorcycle beyond maybe 30-minute hour jobs, I would probably just take this to a shop and have them do it. Took me about 4 hours to do with the filming, talking, and all of that, but I can see how George gets it done in about a half hour, or excuse me, an hour and a half, with no extra responsibilities of filming. All in all, pretty impressed. First thoughts on the cam. I mean, I've just done a little break-in with it. The biggest difference I noticed right away is this bike, where we live here in the Pacific Northwest, consistently needed the use of the choke lever to be able to get it started when it's cold. You'd start it the first time, it wouldn't start. You'd hold this thing open. Second time it would start, and you'd need to fast idle it to get it going. As you see earlier in the video, it's cold out right now, right? You can see my breath. And this thing started straight away with this closed finger on the button. So I think that right away it's running a little better. It seems to breathe a little better, which is good. I'm going to do another couple heat cycle break-ins, do a follow-up after a 300-mile break-in, but I think overall I'm going to be pretty pleased with it. Yeah, I think I would say this would be a good thing if you're really looking to start working on your own bike and you want to do something that's a little more advanced than maintenance. This would be a really fun project for you. Don't be afraid of it. Reach out to Tec, have them send you the cam. You cannot order this cam on the Tec Bike Parts USA website. You cannot do it. Okay, does not work. They don't stock it. So if you want to do this, you're going to have to email George, email info@tecbikeparts.com, and ask them to send it to you in the US. If you're in the UK, other places in the world, they do international shipping. I was really pleased with the DHL shipping they gave me after we sorted it out. It was here in about 5 days from date of shipping. Pretty solid. Regarding the whole discussion on the Facebook group earlier about who makes the cam, my cam did not have any tooling marks on it. Okay, so there was no logos or anything like that to indicate who manufactured it. Tec says it's one of the oldest manufacturers in the UK. Somebody previously on one of the threads that I was posting on said that their cam was made by Kent, and they had a made by Kent logo on it somewhere, or some kind of documentation stating that. Mine didn't come with that, but I'm not surprised. One of the things that I noticed that's really interesting about this is that Kent makes a cam for the Himalayan, and on their page, excuse me, on the Baxter Cycle website selling the performance cams made by Kent, they are using the same exact dyno chart that Tec uses on their website. I don't know what's going on there. I did let Tec know that that's happening, because initially I thought this was somebody, stealing from their website. But the more I thought about it, if Kent is making these cams, it's very possible that they are selling the exact same ones branded under Kent. And this, somebody on the thread on Facebook asked why this would matter, who cares? From an emotional standpoint, it doesn't. I don't know why anyone would care who makes their parts, beyond making sure they're quality. But it might matter to you if you're a US customer and you are within driving distance of Baxter Cycles or one of these other places that sells the Kent cam. If it is indeed the same thing, you may be able to get the same thing without having international shipping. Again, I don't know. I don't know what's in the Kent box, but the one I got from Tec works just fine. So, final thoughts is, really pleased. The installation process went well. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope the little parts that I added some anecdotes to, or some commentary to, made it a little easier for you on your install. And until next time, have an awesome day, guys.